I'm not scared of technology, and I really trust technology, but it's really important that you see what technology is good at, and what is just stuff that's a bit frivolous.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
My guest this week is Ben Barringer, a Chartered Financial Analyst, Global TMT Analyst and Executive Director at Quilter Cheviot. This is a slightly different podcast, and it's a taster of our upcoming breakfast seminar on September 26th at St. John's Mill, Isle of Man, where Ben will be our guest speaker, and I hope to see many of you there. Ben will discuss everything you ever wanted to know about AI, but we're too afraid to ask. The Thornton team and I are eagerly looking forward to Ben's presentation. There's so much more we can explore in the realm of AI. If you wish to send any questions in advance of the seminar, please do so, and use the link below in the show notes. If you can't make the seminar, Ben has kindly offered some time slots on the 25th and 26th of September for personalised sessions on technology and AI. This is a great opportunity to get answers to your important questions. So in the meantime, have a listen to our chat in episode 118, and do get in touch if you wish to attend on the 26th. Register in the show notes below. Well, I'm delighted that my guest this week is Ben Barringer from Quilter Cheviot. You're a chartered financial analyst, which I know is a really hard exam to get. Very impressed with that. And you're a global TMT analyst and executive director at Quilter Cheviot.
Yeah.
So welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you.
Well, I mean, the object today of this really special recording is to, of course, promote the event that we're holding on the 26th of September at St. John's Mill, which you are our guest speaker at.
Yes.
And what better way to entice people along than to get you on the show and explain what we're going to be covering.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you also get a free bacon sandwich as well. So there you go.
Yeah, you do. Of course, vegetarian options are available. But no, I mean, you're going to be talking about AI, everything that you ever wanted to know and we were too afraid to ask. So, look,
it's going to be a fascinating session. I mean, basically, I've been looking at technology for over 25 years. And so if you do the maths on that, that means I started doing my career in technology in 1999. So, right. These rises and falls of technology, that's absolutely my bread and butter. And so we can talk about AI, but if people have got other questions about the market and what's happening in tech, I mean, the last few days has been very tumultuous. So, we've gone from a situation where people are probably a little bit complacent about technology investing, and now it's all capitulation. And so the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle, and it's really important to focus on all the facts and the realities of what's happening.
Yeah,
so,
sure. So how did you get into the tech sector?
Yeah, so
1999.
Yeah,
that when you started, there was a tech bubble.
Exactly.
Crashed about 2001.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So that was all about the build of the internet. Right. And so companies like Cisco were the NVIDIA of the day. They were the company that was enabling people to communicate. So all the routers and all the comms equipment that allows the internet to work, those were the picks and shovels, if you will, of the day. Yeah. Now, fast forward to 2024 and 2022, actually, when Gen AI really started. And NVIDIA is the thing that's allowing people to train these models. So those are the picks and shovels. And it's an amazing thing. I remember being back in 1999 and there were lots of hyped, business cases and so on, and trying to pick what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, was quite difficult. Google obviously was a winner, and Amazon was a winner. And I remember saying to somebody, "Oh, I'll never buy shoes on the internet. What a waste of time that is." But I've not been in a shoe shop for about 10 years, so I was wrong. There was lots of wrongs.
Well, either that or you've got very old shoes, but
that's very true.
So you're going to say about your dad. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, so my dad started. He worked in technology all his life, actually. He was an electrical engineer, and he used to design his own computers and basically take personal computers and put them in for industrial applications, and did a lot of work with Apple in the early days, the Apple IIe, if you remember those, and original x86 computers and things like that. And we were very lucky because we had a computer at home before most people had, a Spectrum or a Commodore and all those kinds of things. So I was very lucky. I sort of grew up with it, and I guess even though I don't have that much technology in my life, people think I'm a real techie, and I just surround myself with tech. I'm not scared of technology, and I really trust technology, but it's really important that you see what technology is good at, and what is just stuff that's a bit frivolous. What we're really interested in is finding technologies that go from 5% penetration to 85% penetration, like the smartphone. There's lots of technologies that start as little early adopters. 3D television is a really good example. People thought it was going to be a really big thing, and then it just never really took off. And so trying to work out those adoption cycles is what I'm all about.
Yeah, that's really, really difficult though, isn't it? And then once it gets there, because if you miss it, then of course, is it going to do that? You can only get to 85% penetration once and then hopefully maintain its market position.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, a great example is Apple, right? The smartphone. There were smartphones before the iPhone. Nokia had a smartphone, but the iPhone was really the one that went from that 5% all the way up to, the smartphone, that penetration is actually 86% now, right? So that market, smartphones, has gone from being a big growth market to now a more mature market.
Well, look, so what we did in advance of this call, I was asking my colleagues here at Thornton to say, well, what should we ask Ben, to promote this this show that we're going to have? So my colleague Natalie typed into ChatGPT and said, what questions should we ask about what insightful questions should we ask an AI event to help gain deeper understanding of the topics discussed and foster engaging conversations with experts? Here are some good questions to consider. So AI came out with this amazing list of questions. So I'm going to ask you a few that ChatGPT wants to know about itself. So Ben, what are the most significant recent advancements in AI technology?
I mean, this is a great question. Well done, ChatGPT. I mean, does it feel a bit like cheating when you do that? I mean, this is the problem with new technologies, is getting people to think, I'll use ChatGPT for that. It needs to become a verb, right? I'll Google it. The most significant in the last 2.5 years is the advances in generative AI, right? And so AI, the mathematics for AI has been around since the 1950s, right? But what was required to get those mathematics to work was an ability to store data cheaply and to process data cheaply. And that ability has only really come with the advent of cloud computing, right? So cloud computing is an ability to store lots of data in a big data center and then process it relatively cheaply. You're basically getting access to a supercomputer. You can actually rent, cloud instances and cloud processing and cloud storage. So that the cloud has been a very much a necessary condition for the advances we've seen in AI. And then back in 2014, a Ukrainian chap, there was a competition to basically do image recognition, right? And lots of people were using classical CPUs. What happened was he was the first person to use a GPU, a graphics processing unit, actually an NVIDIA graphics processing unit. And so he applied all this mathematics using GPUs and got much better results than everybody else. And so that's been the real start of the cloud computing plus the GPU innovation has really been the start of an ability to start generative AI. And GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer models. So generative, meaning that they can produce stuff. They actually create stuff. Pre-trained, you have to give them a load of data before. And transformer, let's not worry about transformer too much. It's mathematics. It's very complex mathematics, transformer algorithms. So that's given computers an ability to generate content. And what you do is you give a model a load of data, as much data as you can give it, the Bible, as many journals as you can find, all the different information on the internet, information on Reddit, so on and so forth, right? You give it all that information and you say, okay, based on what I've taught you, what is the most likely next thing, or what is the most likely answer to this question? Let me give you a really simple example. The cat sat on the is the next word. Based on everything that I've shown you, Matt is probabilistically the most likely answer to come out of that, to be the next word in that sentence. And that's exactly how GPT models generate content. You ask them a question and they say, based on what I know about this question, what can I tell you? Right? Yeah. Now, the really important thing is that the cat sat on the mat is the most probabilistic answer, but the cat sat on the wall or the cat sat in the tree is also a realistic answer. And that speaks to the problem actually for generative AI, which is that it gives you an answer whether it's correct or not. If it's probabilistically the most likely, it gives you that answer. You follow me? So
I do.
This is why GPTs are great, but they also require really high amounts of supervision.
No, indeed. I can see that. It's almost as though this is 99% probabilistically the right answer.
Spot on.
With it. Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking about all these questions that it's generated. It's like we should ask it. Where do you see it? Where do you see yourself evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, look, what's important is that at the moment there's lots of leaps that people make because this passes what's called the Turing test. The Turing test was invented by Alan Turing in the 1950s to test whether something is intelligent or not. And the test was, if I sit in front of a computer, can I tell, talking to something, can I tell whether it's a human or a computer based on that interaction? And largely ChatGPT sounds a lot like a human, but that's not consciousness. And it's not reasoning. If I tell ChatGPT that A equals B, it will not be able to tell me that B equals A, right? There's no causation with stuff, right? It can look for relationships, but it can't talk about the causality between those things, right? Similarly, it cannot make value judgments, right? These are the areas that companies like OpenAI are working on, being able to make value judgments. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember when Sam Altman was dismissed from OpenAI, probably about a year ago, something like that now? One of the reasons that they talked about his possible dismissal is that the ethics around some of the things that they're working on. And so
sure
we'll talk about ethics, but yeah, that's the direction of travel. Ultimately, we're looking we'll move towards AGI, right? Which is much more of a sentient type of conscious type of AI.
Right.
I think we're still a long way from that, personally.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the biggest challenges then?
Yeah. I mean, it's challenges in terms of adoption. That the biggest one we've already talked about, which is just habit, right? So will people stick with Google and keep Google searching, or will they start talking to assistants far more? The way we talk to Siri's not a very good example because it's not very reliable.
No, it's not very good, is it? No. Sorry, Siri.
No, well, exactly. She'll probably jump on both our phones, right? But being able to make Siri better and more informed and more reliable, because even at the moment, even if she's 80%, that 20% of times she's not good, it makes people not use them. You need to make it 99, almost 100% good. So that's the biggest barrier to adoption is habit and the use of these assistants.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of, other risks, there are lots. Regulation, I think, is a big one. In terms of just the physics of getting these Gen AI models to work, the power restrictions are quite significant. We can maybe talk about that later as well. But there are lots. But where I point to is this really delivers a lot of value to people, and I can talk about some of the use cases we're seeing at Quilter Cheviot actually.
Yeah.
And that drives adoption. What you've got to be very careful about, though, particularly from an investing point of view, is that you're interested in the reality of what's happening, not the expectations or the hype of what's happening.
Of course. Yeah. What's already working and what's likely to work in the future.
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that one of the best initiatives I think Rishi Sunak did in his few months as Prime Minister, he had an AI conference, didn't he? In London, which attracted all the big hitters really. And I think he was after having the sort of regulation and measures in place to make sure AI is developed and used ethically. I mean, where do you see that going? I mean, I'm talking about outcomes for people when they like, if you look at a feed of a teenage boy in in the algorithm that something like Instagram generates, and compared to somebody like me who just Googles things endlessly to do with cycling and gardening and all that stuff, completely different feeds.
Yeah,
but they're already throwing sort of bad images, if you like, towards kids. I mean, how can that be controlled more, do you think?
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah, look, we all have our own algorithms. I always find it fascinating to look at other people's Netflix homepages. They're very different. Yours is very different from mine and so forth. Look, the EU's really regulation is different across the world, actually.
I'm sure.
In China, they've only allocated 7 licenses to companies that can do AI. So it's a very much, this is what you can do, and it's very it's very authoritarian. The US is taking a much more laid back approach to and seeing how things develop. That's principally probably because most of the big AI companies are US. The one that's really leading is Europe, actually, and so we've just had the initiations of the EU AI Act, and it's being written and debated at the moment. But the areas it really focuses on are high risk areas, right? And it defines high risk in 2 ways. First of all, harm, like, is AI being used in areas that could cause actual harm to people? So in medical devices, in toys, and so forth, things like that. And then the second area of high risk is sort of rights. Is AI making discriminatory decisions that can harm people? It's a very complex subject, actually, and it's something I can go into a lot more detail in at the breakfast. But unfortunately, as this technology develops, as all technologies develop, regulation has to sort of follow as well. And you've got to be very careful that you regulate appropriately and you protect people, but you also don't stifle innovation as well. I always think, it's a slightly frivolous example, but I always think back to the car. Remember that the first cars had to have a man standing in front of it with a person with a red flag, right? Carrying a red flag.
Yes.
That to me is, over-regulation, and that completely misses the point of the car. But you've got to be careful that the regulation is appropriate as well. Like GDPR, I think the EU has learned a lot of lessons from GDPR, actually, because GDPR was supposed to protect your data, and it's had a lot of positive influences, but it's also had some, unfortunate side effects in the sense that every website we now use has to be GDPR ticked and so forth. So it slows down the internet and the experience.
Yeah. No, great. That's really good. And so how is AI currently being used in your business? Are you using it in marketing and advertising and Quilter Cheviot?
Yeah, well, we use it in lots of ways. I'm actually quite lucky. I've been badgering our CEO for over a year now to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to use AI. So I lead our Microsoft Copilot trial. So Copilot is the Microsoft infusion of AI into Office, right? So Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, actually. The way we think we're going to use it as the best use case, actually, is to be able to get it to transcribe meetings for us and then write summary notes, right? So, back at the beginning of my career, I used to have to minute, like all juniors, had to minute meetings. And it's probably the least favorite thing I've ever done in my career. But AI is very good at that sort of transcription and then summarization. And then it's also very good because you can get it to say, write me a summary, but then you also say, did we talk about this or give me some takeaway highlights from this? Or did we talk about this particular issue or that particular issue, right? And so it can save, we think, both internal and external meetings, save us a lot of time. And that's a very good use case, because basically, if you can save somebody half an hour after every meeting that they do, the payback is quite significant. So that's certainly a very good use case.
That sounds like it. Yeah. It does sound like it, along with the cybersecurity issues that go along with that sort of data.
We have to be very careful around our data and our data protection. Absolutely.
Good. So, well, I mean, we've got so many questions here. We can just go on and on and on. And I particularly want you to save the answer for this one. But how do you see it? What skills and knowledge should individuals focus on to build a career in AI? That's for this time of publication to go out in this podcast would be very useful, especially with all the A-level and GCSE results about to drop on people's doormats.
This is a really difficult one, because I talk to college students all the time, right? About because it's fascinating for them to listen to me about technology, but also for me to listen to them about how they're using technology and and what applications and social media and all those things, and is virtual reality a thing or not, and games, all that. So I always used to say, what you should do is learn coding, right? Coding is, it's absolutely the language of computers, and it's vital. Jensen Huang, who's the chap who leads NVIDIA, recently said in an interview, don't teach your children to code. They won't need to code, right? So that a very influential person basically stifled my number one answer of what people should learn about when they're at school. I still think being able to code or understand how computers work is super important. I think cybersecurity is a thing that's never going to go away. The most important thing, though, and I think, Sharon, you and I probably share this, is all of those interpersonal skills. There's plenty of things that computers can't do. Think about our experience over COVID, right? When you are talking to people about their financial wealth, being able to be in the room or be able to look somebody in the eye, and all those interpersonal skills that we all learn over the years, those are super important in all walks of life. And I don't think computers will be able to take those away from us. What you've got to remember about all of these tech innovations we've seen over the last 2,000 years is they're all just, the steam engine, the plow, you name it. They're all taking away rather mundane tasks, like minute writing for that matter, and allowing us to spend more time doing those very uniquely human things that we do. So, I was very lucky. I went to university and my dad said, I don't care what you study, just go and meet your friends for the future. You know what I mean? And go and polish yourself into a human. Right. And I think that's what I would try and leave people with. How's that?
That's a wonderful goal. That's it's
the goal. I'm not sure I've achieved it.
I love your dad. I think he's great.
He's all right. Yeah,
what a great thing to tell your kid. Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Well, I think we've built some really interesting and fascinating content already. I think, your presentation, I am so looking forward to it. There's so much we can explore, and of course, if any of our listeners want to send any questions in advance for the seminar, I think we can certainly put those at the end. And
that's great. And also, I just spoke to Paul Roscoe, who quite well. He said we've got some time. If you can't make the breakfast, we've got some time on the 25th and on the 26th. So if you want to do a more personalised service, we're all about sort of personalised portfolio management at Quilter Cheviot. And so if you want to put a personalised session on technology and AI and so forth, that's something we can definitely facilitate.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And we can also do some follow-up questions maybe in a follow-up podcast. So let's...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much today for your time, Ben. That's been... a real quick run through the sort of things we're going to talk about, and really looking forward to it very much.
Very much so. Me too. Great.
Thanks for listening this far. I hope you found this episode to be valuable. If so, I'd like to ask you for a small favour. Would you please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review, because that's one of the best ways for others to find the series, and please send a link to the podcast to 3 friends or colleagues who know they'll find it helpful. That way, we can spread the word about how great a place the Isle of Man is to live and work and help spread some positivity. Thanks again for tuning in and being part of our great community. I'll see you next time. Island Influencers is a fortnightly podcast. Make sure you don't miss the next episode by clicking the follow button on your podcast platform. A big thanks to the producer Catherine Watts from Social Cues and editor Martin Bamford at Bear Content, and thank you for listening.